What's up, everybody? It is Uncle Matt here for our live Friday night stream that we've been doing every week now. Whew, I'm not gonna lie, I am exhausted tonight. Busy day for my normal job, busy day for my normal work. The troll from Toronto jumps right in the chat. Richard Greenberg right out of the chat to jump in. I had to know you were going to be here tonight for this one just because of the big match we got coming up tomorrow night. Nashville SC versus Toronto FC at Geodis Park. Should be a fun one. So the Rick versus Uncle Mad Derby at Geodis Park tomorrow night should be a fun one. But yeah, I got a little delayed. I was watching the Braves game, was watching SmackDown, was watching a little bit of different stuff there. So jumping in late, but better late than never. But the big thing is, I mentioned, Toronto FC comes to town tomorrow night against Nashville SC. I'm sure Richard can throw some things in the chat here with his thoughts. But I mean, for me, I mean, this is a wide open match to me. I mean, like Nashville SC's looked good last week against Orlando, but we've been up and down all season long. Haven't really been able to create any kind of consistent goal scoring. The defense has been solid, but I mean, it's gonna be a tough one. I'm a light fan of Toronto FC. I will always rally for Michael and Bob Bradley. Michael Bradley's one of my favorite players of all time. There was a certain time where people that follow the national team turned on him for whatever reason. I don't fully understand that, but because he was, to me, a legend of the game. But you know, he's still doing his thing up there in Toronto. Bob's up there with him now. They got Bernadeschi. Obviously, I think the two key things for this match that really kind of throws into confusion for both teams is both teams have like key injuries. Randall Leal still out for Nashville SC. Lorenzo Insigne still out for Toronto FC. It kind of leaves the match wide open. It's really hard to say what's going to happen. Richard says we blew so many 2-0 leads. Richard, Nashville SC has not given up 2 goals in a match so far this season, but they've also not scored more than two goals in a match this season. So this could be a match where if anybody gets a goal, they're going to win, because I don't know that either team has the ability to stop the other team. I don't know that either team has the ability to score a lot. I like what we saw last week from Nashville SC with Fafa Ko becoming more involved in the attack. It was interesting he moved to the left side. That's like his more favorite side that he's played prior to coming to Nashville SC, but he's played more on the right to accommodate Jacob Schaffelberg. But he certainly looked better on the left side. So, do we sacrifice Shuffleboard being a starter to keep Fafa on his favorite side? That's going to be interesting to see what the lineup choice is tomorrow, because I definitely think what Nashville SC did last week with Fafa playing on the left where he could cut inside, he came out centrally a lot. We were playing a lot of balls over the top towards him to stretch the field. I think that was really key, really important, because that also opened up a lot of stuff underneath for Henny Mukhtar, because as Fafa, with his pace, with his runs over the top, stretched that defense for Orlando, it created those spaces that Henny Mukhtar loves, where he can just get the ball between the front line, between the defense and the midfield, and just turn on a dime and really get up to speed. That's when he's at his best, when he's got that space to create between the defense and the midfield. And Fafa helped create that last week. So I kind of feel like Schaffelberg has to come into this matchup. It's the Schaffelberg revenge game. But at the same time, Fafa looks so much better on the left than he has on the right throughout the season. I don't know how you accommodate that. Yeah, and Cinde's still out. Jacob is going to kill us. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The Schaffelberg revenge game could be on deck for sure. But like I said, Fafa looks so much more comfortable on the left side last week. Do you go back to what we've been doing through some matches and play Fafa back on the right and Schaffelberg on the left? Because Schaffelberg seems like to only be able to play on the left. His track record in MLS, as he's, looking through his history, he's not really playing on the right, but you would almost think he's like an old school winger, where now all the modern wingers like Fafa, they want to play on the opposite side of their natural foot so they can cut inside and shoot. But Schaffelberg is like an old school winger who wants to play on his natural foot side. He wants to play wide. He wants to run with pace. He wants to put in crosses. I'd love to see them both play. Like I think they're two of our most dynamic players. Their pace brings so much to the team, but I don't know that Gary's gonna like find the creative way to get them both into the team that opens things up. I'd love to see like what I really love to see, and there was people who talked about this in the preseason that Fafa had done this sometimes at Houston is him playing as the striker. Play, you know, Muyl or Hawkinson on the right, Schaffelberg on the left, Hani in the hole as the 10 slash 9.5, and Fafa as like a striker. I would love to see that tomorrow. That would be incredible to see that tomorrow. Don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it. What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? I'm sure TFC tires of playing in the freezing conditions. Let me pull it up right now. I think tomorrow we're looking at like mid 60s, kind of on and off rain tomorrow. Uh, we had a brief pop up to this like last week of like popping into the 80s, and it was like, oh man, we're finally out of like the bad weather. But then it's like the last 2 days in Nashville's kind of dropped back into the cold, kind of like rainy spring type weather. But I will pull up just for reference the official weather forecast for tomorrow to see what it's going to look like. Because I'm going to be at the game, so I definitely want to know what the weather's going to be like. That's shockingly something I probably should have been looking at beforehand. But I also work in like youth sports, so I need to be aware of what the weather is going to be tomorrow to make sure I don't have to cancel any of the games that I'm responsible for overseeing, because that'd be super annoying. Hmm. We might have bad weather tomorrow because weather.com's not working right now. Anyway, but yeah, like it's interesting. I think like Toronto FC, interesting team. Like they've definitely like they're going for it in terms of like what they've brought in to try to like compete. Insigne being out injured hurts them, but like Bernadeschi, they signed Sean Johnson, who's been one of the best goalkeepers in MLS over the last few years. They're going for it, and I think it makes sense. Like if you got Michael Bradley kind of on the tail end of his career, you got Bob Bradley, one of the better coaches in MLS history. Back what you got. Go for it. Go for the win. Go for the championship. But it seems like it's like they're putting a lot of new pieces into place so far this season. And with the injury to Insigne, obviously that changes things. But it seems like maybe everything hasn't completely clicked. Like as Richard mentioned in the chat, they've like blown a few leads. They haven't quite been able to get to the point where they can seal things off. But like they've got good players. They've got a good team. I've heard a lot of podcasts and a lot of people that cover Nashville SC talking like this is probably a good time for us to be catching Toronto, because in terms of talent, in terms of squad depth, in terms of what they've brought in, they should be a pretty good team. But right now things aren't going really well for them, so it's probably a good time to catch Toronto FC. Richard says we don't have a 9. Hey, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. We've got 2 9s who don't know how to be a 9. So you want Teal Burnbury? You want Sapong? We could definitely give one of those up to open a spot up for when we can get the 9. And that's been like, I think that's the biggest frustration for Nashville SC right now is like Club and Country podcast. It's probably, if not the best, it's one of the best podcasts that cover Nashville SC. But Tim Sullivan, who's way smarter than I am when it comes to soccer stuff, way smarter than I am when it comes to stuff in general. His defense of CJ Sapong at this point in time is like getting borderline insane. Like he's like, it's small sample size is kind of like the trademark signature phrase of the Club and Country podcast. But he's just talking about how he's like, well, if you're getting goals elsewhere, you don't need your striker to score. We're not getting goals elsewhere. Like Hani Mukhtar is the only person who scored goals last year. This season so far, we really don't have a consistent goal scorer yet. Hani got his first goal last season. Fafa got his first goal last week. You can't defend. No other league, no other situation in the world would your first team, your first choice striker, be coming up on a calendar year without scoring a league goal, and people would be like, oh, look at what he does off the ball. Look at his extra work. Look at it. It's insane to me. Like the people that are still at this point in time saying, well, small sample size, CJ Spong, the work he does off the ball. It's like, No, your striker has to score goals. Like you can survive if you don't have to have a striker that scores 100 goals a season. They don't have to score 20 goals a season. But to score 0 goals ever in a calendar year is insane. And the fact that there's like people defending it just like is like you're 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 getting wrapped up in like the deep analytics that are just like that's fine. They have a place in sports, but like your striker is supposed to score. Your striker is supposed to score goals at some point in time. Your striker is not supposed to go a calendar year without scoring a goal. So like I got super frustrated with like the Club and Country podcast this past week because it's a great podcast. Love Tim Sullivan, love Wes Bowling, love what they do. Their content is great. But when he was like, it's not that big of a deal that CJ Sapong still hasn't scored a goal in almost a year. He's doing the off the ball work. He's doing defensive work. He's playing. It's like, and his argument was, if you're getting the goals elsewhere, that's fine. And we're not getting the goals elsewhere. It's just Hani Mukhtar. Fafa just scored, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we're getting the goals elsewhere, so we don't need to worry about CJ Sapong. No, we just now got one goal from elsewhere. It's like, stop looking at the data, watch the match, understand your striker, your number one striker. Does he need to score 20 goals a season? No. If you've got him coming from elsewhere, no. Does your number one striker need to score at least one goal in a calendar year? Yes. I'm sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but I got really frustrated with that, that comment from Tim Sullivan this past week about it's not that big of a deal that CJ Spong hasn't scored a goal in a freaking year. He's like, well, he's doing all the other work. He's like, who else is doing the defensive work? Walker Zimmerman. You know who's probably got more goals in last year than CJ Spong? Walker Zimmerman. Your striker's supposed to score goals. I mean, that's soccer. Like, if you're just like oh, blah 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 blah, you're looking too much at the data. You're looking too much at like the basics. You're trying to make soccer too complicated. If you're like, oh well, if he's doing the extra work off the ball, it's like, no, your striker should score goals. At least one goal in a calendar year. That's not too much to ask from your first choice striker. Okay, I finally got the weather thing to work right now. So tomorrow, looking pretty great. It is looking pretty great tomorrow. We're looking at, not great. That was an exaggeration. I think I was looking a few days ahead. Tomorrow, Saturday, we're looking at a high of 59, low of 45, about a 17 to 12% chance of rain tomorrow. So it'll be a little bit chilly, but overall, it'll be a pretty good day. Decent day out at Geodis Park tomorrow. Probably an upgrade over Canada. Sad to say for my Canadian friends out there. Whew. Richard says, sounds very familiar to our strikers. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. CJ Spong, he does really great work off the ball. No doubt about that. Like, you can see it, you can see it especially, like, when I go to the matches live. I see how much work he's putting in. I see how much he's doing. There's no doubt about that. Like, I'm not, like, downgrading that. I'm not saying that's not an important part of the game. But, like, at the same time, that's, like stupid American comparison. It's like saying, like, oh, well, if your quarterback doesn't throw any touchdown passes, that's fine. It's like, yeah, if everything's going well and, but you're not going to win a championship if your quarterback goes a year without throwing a touchdown pass. At some point in time, your strikers have to score goals. I mean, that's just the end all be all. Like, we can't just, like, apologize for CJ Sapong to the end of time and be like, well, but he runs really hard off the ball. He presses. He does a good job in the press. He holds up play really well. It's like, if CJ was holding up play really well and constantly laying off passes and, like, Hani was scoring consistent goals, like, it's... You look at, like, St. Louis, like, well, they, everybody just gives them goals. But you look at Seattle, you look at Atlanta, some of these teams that are, like, banging goals in like crazy this season. You got to get goals. You just got to score. Like, it's a frustrating thing to me to, like, hear people say, like, it's not that big of a deal that the starting striker for Nashville SC just has never scored a goal in the last year. Like, that's insane to me. Like, I don't like understand how like you justify that. How you like literally, I think it was May 9th, May 10th, something like that, 2022 is the last time CJ Sapong scored a goal. At least a league goal. And we're just like acting like it's like, but he works hard off the ball. He holds up play really well. Like I'm so confused about how like supposed like real real like journalists that actually cover the sport are like acting like that's okay. Like I was baffled this week because like if you've ever listened to the Club and Country podcast, it's a great podcast. Love the podcast. Not I don't want this to come off across like I'm like hating on them because they're way smarter than me. They have way more deep analysis of the team than I do. They're way more tapped into the team than I am. But this week specifically, where Tim Sullivan was once again going to the well to defend CJ Sapong and be like, he's doing the work off the ball. It doesn't matter that he's not scoring. It's like, yes, it does. It does matter that he's not scoring because we're not like, if you're paying it in goals from everywhere else, like if like Hani's on, like last year when Hani scored all the goals, it didn't matter last year. But when we got to the playoffs and Hani couldn't find a way to score and there was no other option, it did matter. This season, when we went to New England and nobody could score, it did matter. Cincinnati home game 2 weeks ago when nobody could score, it did matter. It matters if the position that is supposed to be the number one scoring position in the game of soccer, the game of football, whatever you want to call it, does not score a goal for a year. That matters. If you got like 100 other players that are scoring, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're Manchester United, where Marcus Rashford scored all the goals and Wout Weghorst, the dumb tall striker, never scores, it doesn't matter as much. It's starting to matter for Manchester United because Rashford's cooled off and Weghorst still doesn't score. But your striker has to score. Your striker has to score. I mean, it's the stupidest argument I've ever heard that like it doesn't matter that your striker hasn't scored a goal in a year. It's the stupidest argument I heard in my life. I was like pulling. I don't have much hair, but whatever hair I do have. When like I was listening to the Club and Country podcast this week, and he was like, "It's not that big of a deal that like CJ Spalding is scoring because of all the other work he's doing." It's like, well, just put him in center back. If he's more important, his defensive work is more important than scoring goals. Put him at center back or put him at like left back. Just put him on the bench. Your striker has to score goals. It's the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life. I've completely lost my mind here. I've completely gone on a rant here because it drove me insane hearing somebody be like, it doesn't matter that a striker hasn't scored in a year. Like if he was on like a 2 to 3 game drought, I'd be like, yeah, that's understandable. But we're creeping up on 1 calendar year where Nashville SC's first choice starting striker has not scored a goal. That's insane. That is absolutely insanity. Like, maybe it's an MLS thing. Maybe it's like an MLS thing where like goals are like different. But like, I can't imagine any other league in the world where like your first choice striker doesn't score a goal for a year and you're just like, yeah, he's doing fine. Everything's great. Don't, not a problem. Makes no sense. It's insane. I hope this rant leads to like a big final CJ Sapong goal this Saturday. That'd be great. But I don't see it coming because like it feels like, one of the things that everybody said in the offseason was like, oh, but there's no way he's going to be as bad as he was last year. I'm like, he's 33, 34, 32, 31. You don't suddenly re-find your form once you go past 30. As a 39-year-old man, I can tell you, once the legs go, they go. They don't come back. Ronaldo had to run off to like Saudi Arabia to run against like sheep farmers to be able to score goals again. CJ Sapong's not suddenly going to miraculously turn into freaking CJ Sapong of like 2012. He's done. He's just done. I mean, like, there's no way. Like, he's just not coming back at this point in time. I don't understand this defense of CJ Sapong. I don't understand this defense of like, well, but all the other stuff he does. Well, all that to say, I do think I do like Nashville SC's chances in this match because of the other stuff I talked about, like the fact that Fafa Picault is starting to kind of find his form, kind of find his rhythm. That was a weird one. I do think I'm right on that, so I don't think I'm in the wrong on that, but whatever. Um, I'm excited for the match though because I'll always be a stand for Bob Bradley. I'll always be a stand for Michael Bradley. Love those guys. They like my fandom of soccer peaked like right around the time where Bob was coaching the team. Michael, like I remember I saw Michael Bradley Olympic qualifiers came here in Nashville. Awesome, like him and Breck Shea and like Josie were like just crushing it. We just barely fell short of qualifying for those Olympics. And then like 2 years later, I got to go up to Columbus to watch the latest edition of Dos Acero where Bradley just like bossed Mexico, Dempsey bossed Mexico. That forever cemented Bob Bradley and Michael Bradley as two of my favorites of all time. So I can't have any hate for this match. Can't have any rivalry for this match. Obviously I got my guy Richard who's in the chat all the time. I can't hate on him. So it's gonna be one of those fun matches where definitely want to win. Definitely hope we win. But at the same time, it's like I got a lot of respect for the guys on the other side of the field in this one. Whew. It's gonna be fun. It feels like weirdly like this season we've been at Geodis Park a lot compared to last season where we didn't go to Geodis Park till like mid-May. But it still feels like it's been like a month since I've been there, but it's only been like a week. Whew. I had a lot of other stuff I was going to talk about in this one. Michael Bradley passing is still great, but he's definitely lost shutdown speed. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think we both have a player that's very comparable. Michael Bradley for TFC and Dax for Nashville SC. But Dax has kind of always been the poor man's Michael Bradley. I think Dax is a couple years older than Michael, but like it's almost like if Michael Bradley didn't exist, how much better of a career would Dax McCarty have had? Because Dax McCarty was like the exact same player as Michael Bradley, except maybe just a little bit worse. Not a little bit worse, but just not quite as good. We're in the same situation with Dax at Nashville, where his legs are pretty much gone, but he's still got the passing range. He can still pick out the passes, but I think Michael's still got a little bit left in the tank more than Dax does. But they're always going to be like neck and neck right there. Same type of player, same type of guy. Like I'd trade Dax McCarty for Michael Bradley. Don't tell me I said that. I would definitely trade Dax McCarty for Michael Bradley. I weirdly in my head had this game like I was thinking like 3-2 for Nashville SC, but at the same time I'm like we've never looked likely to score more than 1 or 2 goals a game. So I don't know where we would get 3 goals in this game, but I mean if ever there's going to be a game that's going to be 3-2, it's going to be this one. Um, Non-Nashville SC news, big news today. The Titans have apparently agreed to a new 4-year contract with Jeffrey Simmons. That's huge. That is huge. Huge, 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 especially for morale because there's been like some negativity around the team the last couple of weeks. Just because there hasn't been many, you know, reinforcements coming in. Like I think everybody hoped we'd sign some type of veteran wide receiver that could contribute to that group. It hasn't really had anything come in that regard. But, I like most of what we've done this offseason. I don't have a lot of criticism for it. There was obviously like a weird like 2-week period like that was just like all negative where it was like, we're going to trade Derrick Henry, we're going to cut Kevin Byard, and then that all kind of washed away and all seemed like that was more just like maybe like agent talk behind the scenes. But now Jeffrey Simmons re-signed. That's huge. I don't know that we're not going to trade Derrick Henry. I don't know that we're not going to maybe cut Kevin Byard, but that was all like a little bit blown out of proportion at the time, it seemed like. But it's good to have like at least a positive Titans story come out this week of re-signing Jeffrey Simmons. That's huge. We needed that. I mean, we need those type of players. We need to start locking in those anchor players that are going to be huge beyond like whatever is going to happen in the future. I'm looking forward to the draft. Draft's going to be insane this year. It seems like this draft is like the most like unpredictable draft like in a few years. I feel like the last few years, like the drafts have been pretty like predictable. Like everybody knew who was going to go one. Everybody knew like there wasn't like a whole lot of like uncertainty around the draft. But like now, maybe it's because the Titans had been like lower in the draft and weren't so involved in the high up now. And now that this year we're like 11th pick and like there's rumors we might be trading up to three. Maybe that's why I'm more interested in it. But we'll see. I'm gonna get my buddy Kyle to come in and we'll do a whole draft preview. And I'm sure the Carolina Panthers will steal all of our picks, but that's just how things go. Oh man, what a day. What else? Wrestling's been weird. WrestleMania was incredible. Obviously, had the weird, unexpected finish of Cody Rhodes not winning the world title. Apparently, that was the plan all along, though. But now Vince McMahon's back. The Endeavor sale. Whew. Vince McMahon's new mustache is insane. I don't know how, at his age, the life he's lived, like, it's like, how do you, at his age, decide that's something you want to do with your face? Like, especially as that much of a public figure. Like, it's one thing, like, if, like, me or, like, I've changed my facial hair up. I've cut my hair. I've been a long haired person. I've been a short haired person. I've buzzed my hair, been a mustache, goatee, Fu Manchu. I've done everything with my face and my facial hair. But, like, when you're Vince McMahon, when you're one of the most recognizable people in the world, particularly when you're like a, you know, he kind of faded into obscurity a little bit. It faded into Bolivia, as Mike Tyson would say. And maybe like he wanted to be like for the first time in a while, he was going out and doing dinner and stuff. And, like wanted to maybe like change his look up then. But knowing you were coming back into prominence with this whole sale, how do you keep that mustache? Like it looks penciled on. It honestly like does not look like a real mustache. It's the most insane thing in the world. If you don't know what we're talking about, look up Vince McMahon's new mustache. Google it. You will not be disappointed. It's insane. How, but he also like, you know, dyed his hair as well. It's like you were only off TV. You were only gone from WWE for like 6 months. We remember what you look like. You can't fool us. Weird time for wrestling. The most crazy thing in wrestling last week maybe was AEW announced they're going to do their first ever show in England, and they're like the rumor, the main assumption for years, and Tony Khan had said they're going to come to London, was that they would do Craven Cottage because he owns Fulham, so it made sense. Do your own stadium? They would have it's about the size of Nashville SC stadium. So it'd been, they could have got like 25,000 fans in there for a show there. They announced they're doing the first show in London, AEW, all in London, August 27th at frickin' Wembley, the biggest stadium in all of England. Old Trafford might be bigger. I don't know. The Emirates might be bigger. I don't know. But one of the biggest stadiums, essentially a stadium that you could pack 90,000 people into for a wrestling show. So they went from like never wanting to do stadium shows to just like, let's just blow it out and do like the biggest stadium show we could possibly do. It's going to be insane. Can't wait to see how that all turns out. It's baseball season now. It's baseball season now, I guess. United plays Everton tomorrow. I'm not looking forward to that game. That just feels like a trap game for United. Everton is terrible, but Sean Dyche is a master of just like stealing points, finding ways to just like grind out terrible results. Richard Greenberg says, can they fill it? I don't think they'll get like, anywhere close to like a full stadium at Wembley. I'd imagine it'll be similar to like what we had at Nissan Stadium last year. Like last summer, SummerSlam came here to Nissan Stadium, 70,000 seat stadium, but they closed off half of it. Half of it they had to like shut down for like the hard camera side, the production side. I would imagine AEW would do something similar, but like England's like crazy for wrestling. So it's hard to like really know, because like you know at its like lowest points, like TNA used to be able to get like 30,000 people to come out for like TNA Impact shows back in the day. So AEW coming to town for the first time, and it a lot depends on like what the matches are. Like if they have a lot can change between now and August in terms of who's available. If CM Punk comes back to AEW, that's a big draw. If they get Okada on that show, if they get some of the New Japan people on that show, if somebody jumps ship from WWE back to AEW, a lot can change between now and August. So I think like I would expect they'd be able to get a decent crowd because there's going to be people that are going to be excited to see it. But like in terms of can they get like a huge number, it's going to come down to who they have available, who's going to be on the show. Yeah, the Wembley Arena next door, I believe, is what the a lot of the TNA shows were at. But this is officially at Wembley Stadium. This isn't the Wembley Arena. This is Wembley Stadium, which is absolutely insane. Like I gotta think, Tony Khan has something in his pocket. He's got something up his sleeve, like to have the confidence to do this. I think he's got to have something up his sleeve to feel that he can sell the show at Wembley Stadium. Um, the interesting thing is, and when he announced it this past week on Dynamite. The two key points they were selling it as this is one of the events that's going to be a part of the 100th anniversary celebration of Wembley Stadium, but also the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers. So there's been a lot of talk because this is the date, August 27th, is the Sunday before what would normally be when All Out would be, the Labor Day weekend pay-per-view. And I'm kind of thinking the way he was selling this as being like a joint celebration of the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers, the 100th anniversary of Wembley, I don't think this is going to be a pay-per-view. I think this is going to be either a special show on one of the Turner stations or a special show on HBO Max. I don't think it's gonna be a pay per view because I think he wants to keep the Labor Day pay per view that he's always done. Although WWE also announced they're gonna run. No, that was Memorial Day maybe. I don't know. Disregard that. I think he's still gonna run All Out Labor Day weekend in Chicago. And I think this London show might be like a specialty thing that like is on one of the Turner channels or on HBO Max. But you're gonna have to put your biggest matches on the Wembley show to sell out Wembley. So then what do you have left? You're gonna run a pay-per-view a week later in Chicago. It's weird. It's gonna be very interesting to see how all that plays out. It's insane. Wrestling is very interesting right now, to say the least. Wrestling is very interesting, to say the least, right now. I don't have much else tonight. It's always fun to jump on here and just kind of ramble. Went on a bit of a rant earlier. Apologies if CJ Sapong somehow sees this video. I've got no beef with you. You've done some really, 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 really great things in your time in Nashville. But, we need you to score some goals. London is 5 hours ahead of us. I believe that's correct. 5, depending on where you are. Like, I think I'm in Central Time Zone, so I think they're 6 hours ahead of us here in Central Time Zone. I'm not really sure. Toronto, if that's East Coast, that would be 5 hours. So I think somewhere in that range. It's about the same. About the same, so it'll all work out the same. But yeah, CJ Spong, I apologize if the rant earlier felt mean to you. I just want you to score, man. I'm your biggest fan. Score a goal. Come on, CJ, score a goal. It's really effing simple. Put the ball into the net and we'll go effing mental. Yeah, that's all I got tonight. Thank you for watching either live or on the replay. Richard, always in the chat. Great to have him, especially on a head of the big Richard versus Uncle Mad, Toronto versus Nashville derby. But we'll have some fun this weekend. I'll be there live at the match tomorrow, so obviously it'll be a match day vlog to follow. So if you're not already, subscribe to the channel with the bell turned on for notifications so you get that loaded live when it comes up. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. CJ, score a goal. It's not that hard. Nah, it really is hard. Come on, CJ. Just do it.